508-825-1000. Nós estamos fazendo consultas ao vivo, por telefone, por vídeo, dependendo da condição e necessidade de cada.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's forum, Meet the Candidates. I'm Peter Morrison, co-president of the Nantucket Civic League. I'm calling in from Wawinit, which it's very foggy, so I'm the foggy one in the picture above. Today's program is designed to inform you watching now and future viewers who are watching on demand through NCTV Channel 18. And I want to thank our candidates for their commitments of time and effort to seek public office. You're going to hear from a field of just 3 candidates now running for 2 seats on the select board. That will be Jason Bridges, Melissa Murphy, 3 seats, 2 seats, 3 candidates, Jason Bridges, Melissa Murphy, and Cliff Williams. And then you're going to hear just from the one remaining candidate for planning board, Judith Wegner. You'll hear each candidate present their qualifications for office and positions on issues. Then our 2 panelists, Josh Pauling and Denise Cronau, will pose questions to which each candidate can respond. And after that, our viewers will have an opportunity to submit further questions. I'm going to act as timekeeper for each candidate. One qualification is that since we only have 1 candidate now for planning board, once Judith Wegner has made her presentation, we're going to go directly to the audience questions. There will be no questions posed by our 2 panelists, Pauling and Cronau. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President, Lee Saperston, to moderate.
Peter, thank you. I just want to make a very quick comment to all of the people who are attending. Our recent events of the last week or so demonstrate how critically important local government is to a well-managed society. And so I add my thanks to Peters, to our candidates for attending, participating, and of course, running. And with that, we're going to go in alphabetical order for the presentation, and then we'll do a little shuffle for the questions. Jason Bridges is an incumbent select board member. Jason, you're on.
How much time do I have, Lee?
3 minutes, and we're not going to strip your exam paper from underneath your pen.
Thank you. Thank you for the Civic League for putting this on, and for Denise and Joshua to take your Saturday to do this and ask us some tough questions. I'm running for, sorry, I've got a wasp and a fly somewhere flying around me right now. Of course, right? I'm running for select board for a 2nd term. The main reason is I want to serve our community in the best way that I can. And I think that the select board position is, for me, one of the most rewarding personally, and maybe the most effective way that I can help the community. I make all my decisions through the prism of service and leadership and growth. And this being able to serve the community meets all 3 of those. It helps me become a better leader. It allows me to lead, allows me to make decisions, it allows me to serve in a way that I haven't been able to before. I think some of the things that I've learned in my first 3 years, the main one that I've learned is the power of listening. I cannot tell you what a game changer it was for me when I started to listen with the intent to understand versus listening with the intent to reply. And that was with my fellow board members, with town staff, and with the stakeholders and the public and just our constituents of Nantucket. And that was very, very helpful. Sometimes it would change the way I thought. Other times I would still listen, really understand it, and then be able to make a decision. And once I started doing that in my first year, I felt it was more effective. in a time of uncertainty right now, we really need to come together. We need a board that can argue and disagree and come together and make decisions. We need our community to be able to come together. We're in the middle of a pandemic and a historic revolution at the same time. It is paramount that we come together, have adaptive mindsets. We need to be vulnerable. And that's what I want us, that's what I want to show that. I want to lead by example so our community can do this. So our other committees and commissions can do that. Like, we have to come together. We have to be collaborative. That's the mindset that we need right now. I don't think this pandemic is just going to go away in a couple months. I think we're going to be having these conversations about how it affects us for the next couple of years. And that would be pretty much the full of my next term. So I think we need to take the strategic plan that we've had in the last year and a half, and also be able to adapt, because yesterday's home run does not help today's game. So all the great things that we've been doing, we need to continue. And then we also need to have an adaptive mindset to get through these next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Perfect timing.
Thank you, Peter. Our next candidate is Melissa Murphy. Ms. Murphy is, I think at present, a member of our school committee.
No, I'm not.
You're not. You were a
No,
member.
2000. I was. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that little faux pas on my part, you're on.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Melissa Murphy, and I'm very excited and grateful to be here with you today. I'll echo Jason's sentiment of gratitude for the Civic League for hosting this, and for all the candidates who are running for seats in this year's election. I thought it might be useful to use this time to tell you a little bit more about my background here on Nantucket, as I'm a proud lifelong member of this community. I have a history of leadership positions on the island, including holding elected office, as Lee referenced, so I know how to both set and collaboratively accomplish goals. I was fortunate to move to Nantucket when I was 7 with my mother, Jane Bonvini, who immediately became an example of community commitment as a nurse at our hospital for nearly 30 years. I'm a proud graduate of NHS, as are both of my children, well, one soon to be next week. Public education is a passion for me, and in 2009, I was elected to the Nantucket School Committee, where I served for 3 terms from 2009 to 2018. 8 of those years as vice chair and 1 as chair. As a member of the board, I worked collaboratively with the administration, teachers, and community to bring a new superintendent to the district in 2010, helped design and plan a campaign to build a new intermediate school, expanded the middle school, and created policies and initiatives that supported the unprecedented growth of our district, all within the confines of the municipal budgeting process. Collaboration, connection, and communication are themes that have run throughout my professional and community life here, not just on the school committee, but also in my role as executive director of the Dreamland, where I, along with the community and the board of directors, developed a cultural institution that now provides year-round community entertainment and education. Later, I both expanded and clarified the mission and role of the Department of Culture and Tourism for the town as the director of the Department of Culture and Tourism. In both of these professional roles, I was able to continue my committee work in establishing the Nantucket Cultural District. And now my husband, Devin, and I are local business owners running a property management and construction company. But in addition, based on my experiences working on community impact, I became a certified coach and now have a private practice that helps individuals and businesses have a greater impact in their communities. I, along with Jennifer Cohen, a local attorney, formed We Can, Women Engaged in Civic Action, a group whose focus is to support women in leadership roles in elected, appointed, and hired positions on Nantucket. We successfully worked with the community and the town to rename the board from Board of Selectmen to Select Board as a reflection of Nantucket's shared goal of equity and inclusion. So clearly, I enjoy working as a team to bring ideas into action, especially those that have the greatest community impact. I believe strongly in public service and giving back to Nantucket. I look forward to working collaboratively on the Select Board and the broader community to make decisions that shape the future of our island without losing sight of our strong values and unwavering dedication to our community members. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melissa. We turn now to Clifford Williams. Clifford, if I recall, you're an employee of the FAA. Is that still correct?
Correct.
Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself and your statement.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Civic League for putting this on and allowing us to voice our opinions and views. I'd like to start by asking everyone to think back 10 or 12 years to the Board of Selectmen. That's when I first started with the town in my political career, I guess you could call it, and focus on what do you believe the issues were 10 or 12 years ago facing the Board of Selectmen. Does anybody remember? And don't answer, I'll answer for you. It was island home, paid parking, landfill, and sewer. And if you went to a Board of Selectmen's meeting before Corona, the issues were island home, paid parking, landfill, and obviously the sewer blew up, so we were forced to kind of address that very much more quickly. But we seem to be stagnating as a town and as a board, and we can't seem, we have more meetings than anybody in the world. We have more committees than anybody in the world. I've been on a few of them, and we just can't seem to have the Board of Selectmen move forward with these issues. So we have a fantastic opportunity in the next 3-4 years to put these things to rest. We definitely have to do it at the landfill. We don't have much time left. I've got an article in there to gasify or incinerate the trash, which then we can generate electricity or make biofuels or whatever we have to do. Instead of capping the landfill, I think we should be using it to gasify, like I said, to make fuels or generate electricity. And I'm in the aviation industry, you're right. So every day throughout my career, I don't have days, weeks, months to make decisions. I have minutes, not even an hour, just minutes probably to make decisions and go in a direction. And then once you go in a direction, you adjust from there. But we don't seem to ever make a commitment. We seem to just continue to flounder over and over again. I was on the Finance Committee for 9 years, and I found that to be the case where we had situations that I thought were taken care of, and then 5 years later, we're talking about the same situation again. So, like I said, I think we just have a great opportunity in the next 4 years. I'm in business for myself in construction. I work for the federal government. I've dealt with unions. I think I can make a great impact in moving all these issues forward and then focusing and being maybe the shining example on the hill where people ask, you know, what's Nantucket doing? Versus every time we have a problem, we always ask, well, what are they doing off island? What are they doing in Boston? You know, that's great, but why don't we lead? We have an opportunity. We're all our own town, county. We have all the resources we need. And I think we have a lot of brilliant people. We just need to implement it and then move from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. We're now going to turn to our two esteemed questioners, Josh Bowling, Managing Editor of the Inquirer Mirror, and Denise Cronau, a member of our Finance Committee. We didn't quite set this up in advance, but Josh, why don't you ask your three questions, alphabetical order, Bowling and Cronau. Why don't you ask the three candidates your questions, and then we'll turn to Denise and she'll do the same thing. In fairness, if you'd start with Melissa Murphy, that would be the alphabetical shift that I referred to earlier. Josh, it's yours.
Thank you, Lee. Melissa, to start, what character traits or experience would you bring to the board that, and this is sort of a two-parter, would A, benefit the town of Nantucket during normal operations, and B, particularly during town leadership's response to the coronavirus pandemic?
That's a great question. Thank you, Josh. You know, I think without rereading my opening statement, I think that broadly at the select board, one really does need to have a willingness for collaboration, connection, communication with the community, and the willingness to make decisions. I think that Cliff raised a really good point in his opening statement that picking a path and staying committed to it is a really important asset and strength to any committee, and especially for our select board. During the coronavirus, I would say things don't really change. We have to listen to our community members. We have to listen to our public health officials. We have to listen to the hospital and make balanced decisions based on what is good for public health, but what's also good for the financial health and well-being of our community members and our businesses. So I don't see that the skill set really changes much during the pandemic.
Thank you, Melissa. Josh, do you have a follow-on question for Ms. Murphy?
I guess the follow-up would be, Melissa, you've mentioned some pretty broad-based traits. What in particular do you bring? I know you don't want to repeat your opening statement, but what in particular would you do to exhibit those required traits that you just mentioned?
Well, I think that I would do what I've done when I've served before, which is you must listen to your constituency. You must work collaboratively with the administration in which you work with as a policymaking board. And you must work collaboratively with the staff members who work within that administration. So look, I'm one person. I don't have all of the ideas and the brilliance or silver bullets to solve all of the complex issues. I said in a meeting yesterday, if I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here running for office. I'd be, making money off of those ideas some other way. But as a collaborator and as a board member, my responsibility is to listen, to share ideas, to pick a path and find a way to fulfill that mission. I think it's also very important that to understand that as elected representatives, it's sometimes it's got to be the will of the people, not just my will. So finding that balance and being able to hear the will of the people is really important. So I hope that makes it clear.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Josh, turn now to Cliff Williams.
I would like Lee to ask each of the candidates the same question, please.
That's fine.
All right, so Cliff, do you need me to repeat that?
Sure, go ahead. That would help.
Sure. What character traits or experience do you have that you would bring to the board, in your opinion, to benefit the town of Nantucket during normal operations? And then anything else in particular that might contribute to the leadership in this time of the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, I think I've shown I have the temperament to put up with the government, seeing I work for the government. Most people have no patience, and I know why, because it's pretty frustrating. But what I believe I bring as far as experience, like I said earlier, the ability to make decisions and then go with those decisions and then adjust for the decisions you've made when you find out maybe you've headed in the wrong direction or things have to be adjusted like any business. So I've been in the construction business. I printed papers at the Quine Mirror when I was 14 years old. I've been in unions for most of my career, mostly forced to be in unions. I've gone through federal arbitration cases, worked in the space industry, I've worked in the airline industry, I now work for the FAA. I've subdivided land, built sewers, I've built roads. I have the ability to be bonded to do those things. So I understand a broad range of different things. I was a commercial scholar when I was younger. Just like any Nantucketer, I'm like MacGyver. We do everything. We know how to do a little bit of everything. So I think my history of being born and raised on Nantucket helps me in that sense. As far as the coronavirus, I think we need to regroup. Everybody says we're going to follow the experts or we're going to follow the state, but I think everybody's proven that maybe we're just guessing in a lot of this situations because we need to really focus on the fall. I don't think we can just shut down like we just did. Most people are 30 to 60 days away from bankruptcy. I don't know what the restaurant industry is going to turn out to be, but it's pretty devastating when you just tell people to close their doors. So I think we need to focus on a different direction. Sweden didn't shut down at all. I don't think their numbers are any worse. But I think this hiding in our houses isn't gonna solve the problem. And I know we just have to let people have more of a decision-making ability versus this police state that we've had.
Thank you. And Jason, same question to you.
Thank you, Josh. It's a great question. I think it's the same for both. My skill sets helping for both is having a collaborative mindset, being able to work as a team. Melissa, kind of you touched on it. Is I can come in and think all the things that I want to do, but there's 4 other board members that are gonna vote, right? And there's departments you have to work with, and there's different views with your constituents that are very on different sides. And so being able to listen and really understand, and not just kind of like putting in your time and kind of fake listening, I think is the biggest skill. Definitely during a pandemic, definitely when there's when so much is on the line. So I think that is a skill set that would help in both of your scenarios. I think my on the first one, pre-COVID, being in there for 3 years and helping develop the strategic plan and really helping the policymakers not react as much as everything is thrown at us, and really trying to stay the course on housing, the environment, transportation. Because of things like that, being able to work as a team and prioritize, things are going really well. They're starting, right? They're heading in the right direction for housing, right? We were on a shy list for till next June. There's things in place that might keep us, if we keep doing the work and we keep collaborating and we keep listening, that'll keep us in safe harbor for the next 5 or 6 years, right? And I'm not sure that would have happened without the strategic plan, because that focuses all our priorities and the staff's priorities on these certain initiatives. So I think being able to work together with other people and listening and, like I said, disagreeing kind of in my opening, but being able to work through that is very helpful. So I think I would use that for both scenarios.
Thank you, Jason. Josh, are there any follow-up questions?
No, I think I'm good on those.
Thank you, Josh, and I appreciate your efforts for this. Turning now to Denise Cornell, and in the alphabetical order, we're going to start with Cliff Williams.
Thank you, Lee. And again, thanks to the Civic League for asking me to participate in this very productive event. Hi, Cliff.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? So, Cliff, I read recently in Daybreak Nantucket that the unemployment rate is now on Nantucket about 28%. So when you're elected to select board, what will you do in the first 100 days to address this?
Well, I think I saw a chart throughout the whole United States just yesterday, the day before, where they showed, people weren't necessarily unemployed. They were just kept from employment. So I showed statistics on different states where people who were on unemployment, say in the last 2 months, somewhere between 65 and 70% of those people have already gone back to work. So there's just a pent up, I have a business in New Hampshire where we didn't even stop working. We kept building houses, but there was still whatever employment rate there was, like I said, it's gone, people have showed back up again. So I think the only real industries that are probably affected is the entertainment, the restaurant industries, which is a whole nother problem, which we just kind of touched on. So we can just do, what we're trying to do right now, figure out how we're going to open these restaurants, how we're going to bring these employees back. I know a lot of people who are doing one profession and they went out and started landscaping because they have to pay their bills. So the question is, are those numbers real numbers? And like I said, it's a different world. We're back to work. I think you'll find out a lot of those unemployment numbers don't really reflect what's going on right now.
Thank you. A follow-up question, if you wish.
Yes, please. So, Cliff, let's pretend for a moment that those numbers actually reflect people being unemployed. Do you have something that you would do in the first 100 days together with your select board colleagues to address that?
Well, that would be a larger question if it was a reality that the construction workers weren't working or people weren't going back to work. I mean, the federal government just sent out checks anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500, which doesn't last very long. But other than trying to implement like I said before, with the startup, where we let people open up, or we want to let people make better decisions for themselves. Let the restaurant workers determine under the guidelines. Hey, we're going to stagger the seats. We're going to have seating outside. Let them be the judge of how they can operate better and open up those businesses. And then the town would have to come in, obviously, and we'd have to get some guidelines. But it goes back to the science again. Are we following the right science? These drugs they say that worked or didn't work before, now they say they did. We weren't wearing masks. We are wearing masks. So I think you're going to see the unemployment numbers, to make a hypothetical in that situation. I think we're going to find that things are going to get back to normal, but if we face a big decision on what we're going to do in the fall. How are we going to treat it in the fall? And I don't think people are going to be as cooperative in the fall. That's why, as far as when you tell them they got to go inside for 2 more months, I don't think that's going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. I think next we go to Jason.
Thank you. Hi, Jason.
Hi.
You ran a very successful campaign for your first time applying or running for select board, actually receiving the highest number of votes in that election. Could you please name 2 things that were part of your initial platform and tell us how they actually turned out?
That is a really good question, Denise, because my campaign, I didn't run on any specific issue. I didn't run on this is what I was going to do with our island home, or this is what I was going to do with housing. I didn't feel that without being on the board first, even though I was working in town administration, I felt that I understood a little bit what was going on. It's just different when you get in this seat. And I felt it would be presumptuous of me to come in and really run on one thing when there were 4 other board members that would have to vote my way, or at least 2, right? And so I came in and said I was going to be an advocate. I was going to listen. I was going to have no agendas. I was going to be accessible. And that's what I ran on. Really the only thing that I said that I wanted to do was create a licensing board, which I did not do, and which I will continue to do that if I get elected in a second term. And I think that's why when I was chair my second year, I think I really listened to my other board members and the constituents, and that's what helped us get through that strategic plan and make it successful as it was when we started it. So I don't have any 2 specific things. I could use those. The things that I ran on allowed us to get through the kind of the marijuana craziness is what I call it. Like we were building that plane as we were flying, taking off. Nobody knew about what the CCC was doing, what was coming from the state. People were coming at us from all over, wanting to have a license here. And so I think of listening and trying to get my board to make a decision, regardless of what the decision was one of the things that I ran on that I said I was going to do, that I did, that helped us get through the kind of the marijuana issue.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, Janice?
No, thank you, Lee.
I think it's Melissa's turn.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Denise.
On Wednesday night at the select board meeting, there was a discussion about the tragedies that have been happening in our country this past few weeks and the Black Lives Matter movement, and that we on Nantucket can do better. And in that discussion, there was some talk about potentially setting up I'm going to call it the wrong thing, a reconciliation committee or a committee to work on this. And so what would you expect as 1 or 2 outcomes of this kind of work? What would you expect that the voters could see from the town leadership?
Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate the question, because I think that this is the issue of racism and inequality in our community has long gone untalked about. So the first thing that I would like to do is make sure that diversity and equity and inclusion is a strategic plan goal. I think that needs to be immediately added to our strategic plan. And I'd like to add that in my tenure with the school committee, we built a strategic plan and we actively worked as a committee with the administration to make sure year by year policies and initiatives we were creating were meeting those strategic goals. So I'm very familiar with that process and moving those initiatives along. I think for a very long time, we have not been listening to the voices of people of color in our community. And making sure that we have a safe space for people of color to come to talk to us, their elected officials and their town administration, their police department is imperative. And at the same time, I think we also need to create, I'm not sure if I agree with the term reconciliation group, but as part of that plan, there should be a commitment to equity, diversity training for all of our town administrative staff, for all of the people who serve on boards and commissions, and for all of our auxiliary departments, our police department, our fire department, our island home, to make sure across the board our community is demonstrating and actively working on a commitment to equity.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, Denise?
Nope, no follow-up question to that, Lee. Thank you.
All right. I have great difficulty in counting to 3, but I think we've had both Josh and Denise doing 3 questions, or our 3 candidates. At which point we turn to questions from our attendee audience. And attendees, if you can hear me, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen called Q&A. And if you touch that, you have the opportunity to type a question that Peter Morrison will look at and understand and then read out to the candidates if it applies to all. If you wish to just one candidate, let us know in your question that your question is for candidate A, B, or C. Peter, have you been able to look at the questions?
Yes. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Okay. There is so far one question pending. It's a bit long. I'm going to read it slowly. This summer, families are favoring longer-term rentals for their stays on island. Continuous stays by the same visitors means fewer different people coming and going each week. That restrains the spread of COVID-19, benefiting everyone who's here. The Massachusetts stay-at-home order now restricts these summer rentals to leases for 32 days or longer. In just a few days, when phase 2 begins, this 32-day minimum stay could be lifted. And here's the question. Should the town continue this restriction on short-term rentals, safeguarding our residents here for the season, as well as strengthening occupancy of our inns and hotels by short-term visitors? Let me just repeat the question. Question, should the town continue this restriction on short-term rentals, safeguarding our residents here for the season, as well as strengthening occupancy of our inns and hotels by short-term visitors?
Thank you, Peter. If I've got my numbers right, we're back to alphabetical order. And Jason.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Lee. My answer is no. I would not vote for that. I would not want to continue, assuming the governor allows short-term rentals to start in phase 2. I would not be supportive of that, and here's why. There's a lot of reasons. One is access. If you only allow rentals for 32 days and more, there's only a certain demographic of a person who can handle that type of cost. It's taking it away from middle-class people who've maybe been saving their money or been doing a little well, and they want to rent a house for a week and celebrate something, right? You're taking that away from them because now they can't afford it. So I don't like that lack of access issue. I think for the year-round community, so many of us rent out our second dwellings or cottages to be able to afford to live here. And I'm not sure if it was only 32 days and up, they could potentially rent that, especially for smaller places. The second one is I don't think it helps with turnover. I think if you rent a house for 32 days, you're going to have visitors and family coming in and out. So I think to me, I don't have the data on this, but I don't think it's going to stop less people from turning over, right? That's the fear of the short-term rentals. Now, all that being said, that's why I'd be against it. If we continue with the metrics that are happening now, with less positive tests, with less, if we had a spike or a surge, then we would have to look at it. But as of right now, I would not support that. I think we need to encourage, educate, and enforce, right? And the more that we encourage people for good behavior, the more that we communicate and educate them, they're going to comply. I've talked to so many people through the coffee shop that said, wow, people really comply here. They're not doing it where I'm from in the Midwest or Florida. And I think it's a testament to us. You listen to the health department, Roberto, our director, tell us on Thursday that there was a positive case here during Memorial Day weekend that tested after they left. And there's been no spread here. And this is his words, not verbatim, but he said, that's a testament to all the good behavior that we are doing here. We are social distancing. We are wearing masks. The businesses are doing it right. So I want to educate the businesses. I want to help them succeed and have the mindset of joining our success. And if we continue to do that, short-term rentals will not be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Melissa, do you need the question repeated?
I don't. Thank you. I've got the question, and I agree with Jason. I don't like this suggestion at all. In fact, I don't actually see what the difference is between allowing short-term stays at hotels and inns versus renting a house is at all. So I'm not sure it's equitable policy one way or the other. But look, we have a pandemic. We are going to have to learn to live with COVID-19 in our community. I think that the board and the public health department and our hospital have done a very good job of teaching us how to do that. I love educate, enforce, I forget the other E, but I love that mantra, because as renters of short-term rentals, whether it's a real estate agency or a private homeowner, they have the responsibility to educate their guests, not only about how to arrive safely, which, by the way, the governor is giving us recommendations on cleaning protocols and COVID protection. So I think that we're going to be armed with all of the right information we have to do this productively and safely, and that we can do this in line with the state. The only reason why we should ever be stricter than the state, in my opinion, is for exactly the reasons why we were in the very beginning of the pandemic, when there was a fear that a surge in Massachusetts was going to take up hospital beds that we would not be able to send our community members to. So the fear and the lockdown was a preventative so that we could provide care and access to our community members. If we can do that, then we must learn to live with COVID-19 in our community. And as terrifying as it is, we can do it, and we can be safe, and we can educate our visitors on how to do it with us.
Thank you. I think it's Clifford's turn. Again, do you need the question repeated?
No.
Thank you.
It gets back to what I said earlier about the science. I don't think anybody's wants to get sick, and I think everybody's been looking for guidance. But I'm just a regular person, and I go on these websites, and I try to do what's right. I try to follow what they've said, but I don't think that we've even followed the science, whatever science study even is. We were supposed to have a period of 14 days where we tested people. After 14 days, if it's less than 10%, you open your community. We didn't do that in Nantucket. And I talked about Gary Shaw, said it's time to open up and kind of test this thing, and we still didn't do that. So the thing about flattening the curve, or living with this flattening of the curve, we didn't have a flattened curve. We just got rid of the curve. So I'm confused on the science, and that's why I say we need to really look back at what we have now and what we've learned, and get ready for the fall and determine short-term, long-term restaurants, all this stuff. Like I said, Sweden didn't even shut down at all. Maybe we can learn something from them. But waiting for a vaccine, I've heard that. We have flu shots every year, but we still get the flu. So I'm not a scientist. I'll go with whatever they, in a sense, tell us to do, but it just seems to be inconsistent, and I think that's what frustrates most people.
Thank you. I think, in light of how productive this has been, if each of you would like to make one-minute valedictory statement, that would be cool. Start with Melissa.
Sorry, I lost my unmute button here. So thank you. When I announced my candidacy in February, I never imagined the world would change the way that it has. But my reasons for running for a seat on the select board have stayed the same and consistent. I have a steadfast and proven commitment to our community. My mission is to be an active select board member, to apply common sense, sound judgment, and compassion with a keen eye toward keeping all of our community members as well as our businesses safe and supported. So in that light, as a select board member, I pledge to listen, and where I don't have the answers, I will seek information to make the best possible decision. I pledge to be an ally to people of color in our community by speaking out and challenging biases to make real and lasting change for our community, including making diversity, equity, and inclusion a goal in our strategic plan. I pledge to support families and businesses with the best balance of public and fiscal health, to keep working on the issues that have long impacted Nantucket: housing, environmental stewardship, infrastructure, the dump, the sewer, all the things Cliff mentioned. I'm excited for the opportunity to serve Nantucket, and I will work hard to earn your trust and your support. You can learn more about my campaign at murphyfornantucket.com, and I ask for your vote on June 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Clifford?
Yes, I'll just do a quick summary of what I talked about earlier. We've got, first and foremost, I guess I really haven't talked about this one, is the charter. I think one of the biggest problems we have is we don't follow the charter. And I think you can see from the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, town administration kind of admitted that when it comes to listening to people and their problems, when they become too complex and too difficult, town administration seems to want to just push the issue down the road and not really address things. And that's why I think a lot of this unrest has come about also. So we need to either focus on representing the people of the town of Nantucket like the charter says, or get rid of it. We need to focus on the landfill. We have a great opportunity in the next 4 years to turn this thing around and show the rest of the world how to deal with landfills and the toxic methane gas it produces. Get rid of that. That's part of global warming. The island home. I was on that committee, and I could go through the papers year after year, and I don't know why we can't make a decision on the island home. I would press in the next 3 years to get that put to rest. Paid parking, that's just whatever. We'd put all those crazy issues we've been talking about for 12 years to rest. So I just believe with my time on the finance committee, I understand the municipal calendar, I understand the budget, I understand the money. Hopefully it's always it's an education process. I believe I could.
I'm going to turn it back. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. I hope we could hit the ground running, and I wouldn't be in a learning mode. I'd actually be able to implement these things and move forward quickly as a Board of Selectmen meeting, Board of Selectmen member. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clifford. And finally, Jason.
Thank you. I think this is a major, major turning point for Nantucket, more than maybe ever before, at least in our lifetimes. We have opportunity to pivot, to adapt, to change our mindsets. We've been kind of in a way drinking from the fire hose, right? We just had to say no. Everybody wanted a piece of Nantucket, and I think we're going to come out of this pandemic, and we're going to come out of this historic revolution stronger. Nantucket has been a beacon of light in so many different ways over 300 years. I would like to look back in 5 and 10 years from now and say, look, we did this. We did this for our community of color. We did this for our environment. We did things that we never thought we could do for our economy. We adapted. and look where we are. I want to be a part of that team that does that. I want to serve and be a part of that process. And I think leadership is putting other people's interest in front of your own. And I've been doing that, and I want to do it more. I think this is just a pivotal time for us, and I think we're going to come out stronger, and we're going to be more connected. And I think with us listening and us being there for each other and being vulnerable and being able to say the mistakes that we've made, I think we can get there. So I'm asking you for your vote to allow us to get there. Thank you.
Lee, if I can jump in here, this is Peter. For all of you who are watching, this is our first rodeo, and I think we've jumped the gun a bit on the questions. We still have a good block of time available. The schedule actually allows us to have audience questions coming in right through about 2:30. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to go down the list. We now have some more questions, and I'm going to ask the next one in order, which you can start, Lee, with each of the candidates in whatever order it's supposed to be. This question is a basic question, which is, quote, what are your thoughts on our island home? And it's followed by two subordinate questions. Do you support having a facility on island? Should it be included in the overall annual budget, like the fire department, police department, DPW, etc.? So let me repeat it. What are your thoughts on our island home? And do you support having a facility on island? And should it be included in the overall annual budget, like the fire department, police department, and the DPW? And I'm going to hand it off to you now, Lee.
Right, and I'm trying to remember, since we're out of order, what order I should start. Why don't we just start alphabetically with Jason, Melissa, and Clifford?
Thank you.
Our island home.
Thanks. I gotta adapt. We, Melissa and Cliff and I were all kind of dropping the mic there with our big last statements. Now we gotta all right, we gotta come back a little bit here. All right, our island home. Yes, I support a facility here. I don't support a $50 million project for 45 beds at the current site. I think it would fail at town meeting, and that would hurt us in the long run and short term. I think we need to do something collaborative. I think our big choices are, do we have our island home that's smaller, that has, for example, 15 or 20 beds, that is skilled nursing care 24/7 where we need it, and have some type of, salt marsh center, elder center, daycare, adult daycare for children at the current island home? And do we partner with somebody else? I think we have to get in that adaptive mindset that I've been speaking of. I think we're heading that direction. But one giant facility that would have to go on that current site, I don't feel confident that the current residents would be able to stay there during a major commercial development. I think they would have to be moved off island. And that seems horrible to me. So I think there's got to be a better way than just one big project. I think, so that's the first two. The second one, I support the budget override. I think we've been very fortunate to have these state grants keep us through. I'm just worried that running at a deficit, that if we don't build something smaller and more that can move quicker and can adapt, that we're going to end up losing our island home, right? And that's why I think we don't want. Our community votes its values, and so we want a home here. I think there's just some disagreement on exactly what it looks like, and so having something that's more inclusive to more people to have that view at where currently our island home sits is not a bad thing if we can still have something somewhere else that serves the functions that we need for our elders who need 24/7 care.
Thank you, Jason. Peter, did that cover everything?
I believe so. You can move on to the next candidate.
Melissa, our island home.
Great, thank you. So My thoughts are very much that we need to support our island home. I support having a facility on the island. I agree that what we've always had may not be what we end up with when we give it good, considerable thought. And I do agree there is a sense of community frustration that this has been talked about for a very long time and not moved forward on. So I'm not exactly sure on the intricate details of what's holding up progress, but I think we have to come to consensus, negotiate, and move this issue forward. Our residents and the employees of our island home are living and working in what's increasingly an unsafe facility. So it's got to be a priority. I do support including it in the budget override. And, you know, it's an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in, but what do we always say? Nantucket's a special place. And I think that this is, to agree with Jason wholeheartedly, we vote with our values. I don't think a viable alternative to the island home is not having a place for our senior citizens to spend their final days and for community members to spend them with their loved ones. So until we can find the solution, which I'm hoping will be a strong public-private partnership in building a safe facility, then I support funding it.
Thank you. Clifford.
This is like trying to get the COVID virus straightened out and the science we use there. We've gone on and on, like I spoke about earlier, for years. I think we've been misinformed a lot of times where they told us we couldn't stay there, it was going to go into water, it wasn't safe. Then that wasn't true. I've been told that we can't do construction while people are living there, but then I've gone to the facility and they've got a wing blocked off and they're doing construction. So I'll try not to get into that too much. I think town meeting has to decide, but we have to give them the right information. Our budget for the island home back in the 70s was somewhere between 7 and 8% of our budget. So if you took that same amount of money, that would be around $6 to $7 million. Last time I knew, once we get reimbursed, our deficit was about $3 million. We're trying to get an override for 5, but that's only because the island home was put into an enterprise fund. So everybody acts like we've been funding it with this free cash situation. But when we moved it to the enterprise fund, a budget should have moved with it, because we were just trying to isolate the expenses. It's always been part of the general fund. It's always been an expense of the general fund. So if it takes an override to correct that, that's the decision town meeting has to make. But and they can also make the decision whether they want to keep the island home. I just think we've done an injustice over all these years by not coming up with a solution of how to fix it, or just give options. I mean, we've given options, but I think it's been a task where it was designed to fail. I was on the Island Home Committee, and it was just really frustrating. So my decision is we keep it until town meeting decides they don't want it. But like I said, it actually costs us less money now than it did back in the 70s. So,
Thank you, Clifford.
Ready for our next
our
question?
attendees, my apologies for not looking at the Q&A button more closely. It's quite small, but it did definitely click from 1 right up to 5. Peter's been tracking them. And I think, Peter, our next question will start with Melissa. And if you'd read the question, please.
Okay, there's going to be a brief commercial here. The commercial here is to encourage everyone to be sure to vote. June 16th is the annual town election. And one of the things you can do if you want is you can vote absentee, so you don't have to physically enter the school if you would like to just cast your ballot. The requirement that you request an absentee ballot only if you're going to be absent has been waived. Those who reside on Nantucket can obtain an absentee ballot. What you do is you log on. There's instructions in the INM this week, but briefly, the way it works is you go to the town clerk website, you log on, and you print off your request for an absentee ballot. You complete that request, and you mail it in, or ideally just drop it off at a collection box at the main, town building. And if you do that promptly, like in the next few days, the town clerk will then mail you an absentee ballot, which you can then complete and again drop off so that it is received by the town clerk in time to be counted. So everybody who wants to vote absentee, pay attention to the instructions, do what I just said in the next few days, and you will probably receive your absentee ballot in the mail in time to vote absentee, so you don't have to wait in line as they meter voters in 4 at a time. There could be a long line. With that, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, does the local economy need diversification? What are ways for our local government to encourage diversification of our economy if you feel it's necessary? I'm going to repeat it one more time. Does the local economy need diversification? And what are ways for our local government to encourage diversification of the economy if you feel it's necessary? Lee?
Yes, well, it's Melissa's turn. As a leader, we're doing the alphabetical shuffle.
That's right. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you for the question. I'm really heartened by the young professional group that's formed at the Chamber of Commerce. It's a wonderful group of, I want to say 20, 30 somethings. I think I was just too old to participate. But they're coming together and they're talking about building the economic infrastructure and participating in the growth in the way that they're excited to see it. So I'd be really happy to listen to them and see this group evolve. I think that, certainly what we're all experiencing during COVID-19 is access to the internet is having an impact on our ability to work and our ability to educate our children equitably. So if there is a relationship that the town can have to help foster faster internet and internet connection for all, that would be something I would love to learn about. And I think Jason alluded to this earlier, that because there was this, rush or sense of rush of people wanting to come to Nantucket, we had a no first policy when it came to businesses because we want to try to slow the growth. But I do think that it's possible to walk and chew gum at the same time, and that we need to be able to support innovative thinking and innovative business policies while being very considerate about what that growth is. I think the question is asking, do we need diversification from our heavy reliance on tourism and real estate? And, I don't know the answer to that, but I can say I would love to explore it and hear more about it, especially from our young leaders.
Thank you. Clifford.
Yeah, I think in what's gone on lately, I think you can see, I don't think we have to worry about minorities in the community. I think we have to figure out better how we can deal with the diversity in the community. That seems to be our problem. We've got people from Russia, we've got people from Mexico, Central America. We've got a really diverse group of individuals on Nantucket, and Nantucket is a great place to come as far as unskilled labor. I think it's the golden goose of unskilled labor, so there's plenty of opportunity for minorities, especially that probably don't have a great education. So if that's your question, I think we just need to work on dealing with the fact that our community's changed, and I think you can see that through the protests that we had here in the last week.
Clifford, I'm going to give you a few extra seconds. The question was economic diversification. In other words, other industries, other commerce, other sources of income.
Other sources of income as far as what, small business, you mean? Creating a small business for minorities?
Not for minorities, just for Nantucket.
Just for Nantucket, you're talking for the diverse community.
Once again, it's the diversification of our economy.
It's about the local economy, not the people.
Oh, well, then tell me the question again. I don't understand it.
Let me repeat the question.
Sure.
Does the local economy need diversification? And then what are...
Oh, I thought you were talking about the diversity with people, trying to give people equal opportunity. Well, unfortunately, our economy's gone, I think, really to mostly to construction. And we used to have a fishing industry, scalloping industry. Everybody would go scalloping in the beginning of the year, but now it's become too lucrative. Is that, again, am I answering the question correctly? We have these McMansions. That's opened up an opportunity for property management to another level that we've never had. I don't know. I don't think we want to make it more diverse. We don't want to bring NASA here or something, or a big corporation. I think we want to keep that stuff out. So I think we're become a tourist town, and that was the goal back after the whaling industry collapsed. I mean, that's what the reason for the train was, to bring people out to Sconset and Surfside to sell them vacation homes. So we're in the tourist industry. I think that's where we should stay.
Peter, before you go to the next question, I'd like to jump in for 1 second. I think it's too late for people to mail in requests for an absentee ballot because they won't get them back in time. So you can still get one, but I believe you have to call the town clerk's office and request it, or request it via email. But if they mail in the application, it's not going to get there in time.
Thank you, Denise. Important.
Maybe we could just, as a footnote to that, it may be that you want to actually physically request it by showing up at the town clerk's office and at a distance of 6 feet saying,
no, she won't let you in the office.
She won't? Okay.
No. Jason, economic diversity.
Sorry, Lee. I remember Nancy talking about at the select board meeting that you could print off the application, fill it out, take a picture with your phone, and email it into Nancy. So that would be another way. So I just want to make sure everyone it's so important to get everyone to vote. So I just wanted to just kind of jump in there. I'm stepping back.
And
the drop box outside the town building is also available to drop it off at.
Yeah, there are two ways. One would be to take a picture and email it in. The other is that same day, drop it off in that collection box at the town building. So it's not going to spend a couple days in the mail.
Jason, economic diversity.
Yes, I think there does need to start the planning. The first thing is I can't remember, somebody already alluded to is our pretty much our communication infrastructure, right? Our bandwidth, right? If more and more people can move here and be here year round and really successfully be able to connect to anywhere they are in the world, who knows in 10 years if holograms are the way that we meet? I'm just kind of making that up. We don't have the bandwidth to do anything like that here. And it's going to take a lot of work. You've got utility issues, and that needs to come from the town. That was the question, like, what can the town do? I think that's one way to allow us to create things. Like, we don't have any manufacturing here, right? In factories, we build houses and it's tourism. What else can we do? And to me, if we had really, really great infrastructure, the best Wi-Fi in the world, right? We would be able to connect anywhere. I think something else that NPDDC could could start adapting an approach of looking at our economy the next 5, 10, 30 years. And my example is that's something that would make sense. We've kind of had I'm just going to generalize, NPDDC doesn't need to think about the economy because we're so busy already. But I think we could think about how do we adapt it that can connect with our environment, all of our values in housing. So I think there's a bigger role for NP and EDC to play, the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Committee, for those of you who don't love acronyms. So those are my two things where I think we could actually make an effort on in the next, 5 or 10 years. We could put a lot of time and focus into those two entities.
Thank you. Peter?
Here's the next question.
Well, if you'll bear with me, Peter, I looked at them. I think questions 4 and 5 are very much the same. And maybe we could collapse them into one. Would you look at that, please?
Sure. Question number 4 is, what is the single most important thing that the town could do to address the lack of affordable housing? That's one question. And another question following it is, what do you think the town of Nantucket's role should be in resolving the shortage of stable and affordable year-round housing? So what's the single most important thing because of to address the lack of affordable housing? And then what do you think the town's role should be in resolving the shortage of stable and affordable year-round housing? Variants of the same thing, and I'll turn it over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Peter. So there are two takes on basically the same issue, affordable housing and the town's role. Clifford.
Well, I've been interviewed, obviously, on this before. I don't think anybody does more than we do on affordable housing in Nantucket. We've got the Richmond Group putting up a lot of apartments. What bothers me mostly is trying to get the right dialogue and trying to get the right mission statement. And when I went to the 40B meeting we had with about 800 people, and I was hoping that the state representatives for affordable housing, if that's what they're called, were going to show up so they could answer some questions. Nobody from the state comes. And I've been to meetings where Tucker Holland, he's one of our experts. I said, Tucker, where's the state on this? He said, they've been invited, but they don't show up. So it's just frustrating that, Satcham's Path, we've done a lot of great projects. So like I said, you'll never have enough affordable housing. If you're trying to meet the shy list, that's one thing. But you can go back to old town reports back, I've told people this back in the 60s, and they were talking about an issue for teachers. They were talking about affordable housing. That was in 1964. So it's the way our capitalistic system works, supply and demand. You get paid so much and the rent seems to go up. It'll never catch up. It will never be enough affordable housing. So, but I'd like to get with the state and maybe have a dialogue with them on some of these guidelines. It frustrates me to no end that our politicians in the state probably think they work for us instead of, we work for them, they don't work for us. Can I chime in on that infrastructure thing with the fiber? I've heard this before on the Finance Committee. We have the infrastructure for fiber throughout this whole island, and we have a fiber cable that goes underwater to the other side of we put the radar on it because it has to be a reliable source. Where the unreliable infrastructure comes is at Diona's with the microwave link. So we have all this infrastructure with fiber and bandwidth. You just have to pay for it. So thank you.
Great. I think you're done, Clifford.
Yes.
In which case it's Jason on affordable housing and the town's role.
Thank you. I think there was a comment earlier about, town and select board floundering for a long time and not doing the same things forever. And I would say housing is one of the things where we've made some of the biggest strides on. And I don't want to just say we're going to keep, stay on the same path. But look, we're in the safe harbor right now, and there's a pretty good plan. Some of it's in executive session, and you can probably, if you go back and look at all those, you can see the addresses and what we're trying to work on. So I can't speak to everything. That is going to keep us in safe harbor for 5 or 6 years. And depending on where the census comes out, we are most likely going to get to that 10%. But that's not, like Cliff said, that's not going to solve everything. We're still going to have housing issues. Provincetown is at their 10%, and they have major issues there with housing. So, the neighborhood first came in, and that was mainly to keep us out, to keep us in the safe harbor. There's some really good opportunities there. We're focusing not just on the 80% annual mean income, AMI. We're looking at all the way up to 200. We're starting to look at our goal number 4 in our strategic plan is to look at incentives to, sorry, it's loud out there. Incentives for us to use our existing housing. So if you have a second home, how can we figure something out to where you can rent it to a year-round residence, right? And there's nothing really that jumps out of us, but we can figure it out. There's equity sharing programs that we can look at. So I think we really have to implement the strategic plan that we have with housing. It's big, it's giant, right? And I think it's going to continue to keep adapting within that strategic plan. It's going to keep our focus there. So that's what I would say about the housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa.
Thank you. And thank you for the questions. I mean, this is certainly a huge issue for us. I want to emphasize that in addition to affordable, safe and stable is really important keywords there. I think that there are some places that are affordable but may not be safe and may not be stable for some of our community members. So look, the town doesn't need to be in the development business, in my opinion, but there are a lot of fantastic groups that we partner with in the town, as well as our own Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that are going to ask of the town for what they need to continue that progress. I know Jason just alluded to some of the progress that maybe we can't see yet. I'm really excited to learn about what those things are and hear some more detailed updates from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And clearly, town meeting gave them a lot of support. I think we've got, between the CPC and town funding, $20 million. So I can't wait to hear how we're going to spend that money and what those ideas are. But the town's role is to be that collaborator and be willing to help with the funding and the policies that bring that about to a reality in line with what we're talking about. Safe harbor can't be the only goal that we're talking about. That just prevents certain kinds of development. And again, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. While we are preventing unfriendly 40Bs, we have to continue the wide array of development of affordable housing solutions, which are going to include rentals, land, and buildings. So I'm excited to learn more if I'm elected on what's going on behind the scenes.
Peter.
Ready for the next question?
No, decision time. We've had 4 more questions come in, and we've run past our scheduled time.
According to my read on this, we are good until 2:30, Lee.
Okay.
I changed the time on the program to take advantage of the fact that we go until 3 o'clock and we have very little left to do after this. So I would say keep going until 2:30 if it's okay with everybody.
All right, next question.
Sorry, I got to speak up here. Yesterday I thought you said 1 to 2, and my staff at the handlebar left at 2, and I only have one person downstairs, so I'm going to have to leave here in about 5 minutes. I'm really sorry.
Okay, my apologies. We may not have communicated the change in time until the very last minute, but why don't we have one more question and perhaps start with Jason so he can answer and then leave. Is that okay, Lee?
That makes sense.
All right, here's the question. As a select board member, would you support the decision of the Concom to deny the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund the extension of the geotubes below Baxter Road? I'll read that one more time.
That's okay. I got it.
Got it?
I got it. Yes, I would support the Concom. I have supported the Concom. When we allowed the NOI to go out to allow SCPF to apply for this and to go to the Concom and apply, I said along with other board members that we were, whatever the Conservation Commission came up with, we were going to support them, and I will continue to do that. Now that does not mean that we cannot think about other things with Baxter Road and how do we look at this as a planned retreat. And there might be things that SCPF could come back with that they could fortify further past the 954 feet that's there with the geotubes. There might be ways, and I think the Concom is open to that if there's no negative environmental effects. And so I would support the Concom if they approved extending in a certain way. Now, if we don't extend and we don't do anything, we have to really start planning what that looks like. We're saying we're not going to protect Sconset, and some people are okay with that, and some people aren't. Are we going to protect downtown? Right? And how do you compare those two? So I will support our regulatory board, the Conservation Commission. And I said that in the beginning, and I'm still saying that now. And I think there's other things that we possibly could do to protect that area that would be less impactful for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa.
Yeah, I think as a newcomer to the board, the issue of the CONCOM and SBPAF issue is really complex. And I think probably most community members find it hard to follow along what's the intricacies of what's been happening there. But I also support the CONCOM and finding a legal and environmentally sound solution, not just for the SBPF project, but for island-wide impacts of erosion. So, yes.
Great, thank you. I don't know whether you've noticed, but Jason had to leave. And even in his absence, we appreciate his attendance. And I'll thank the other two in a minute. Clifford, please.
Yeah, that's been a combative issue out there in Wisconsin. So without trying to micromanage it and say support the extension or don't support it, I'm not sure what it means other than overall, either we're going to support the project or we're not going to support the project. Like Jason just said, what's the ramifications? Are we going to let the street fall into the ocean? Then we have to take on the responsibility. We need to come up with that money. There'll have to be an override, or we'll have to find the money somewhere else. So there's just huge ramifications to that whole thing. And I am not as much up on to speed on where they're at and what that all means. But I would just support a lot of these people who've spent a lot of money to keep that road there. We haven't had to spend very much at all. So I'm for trying to find a solution that's going to keep something in place that's going to prevent the erosion, because it's just going to be a calamity of errors if we allow that to be taken out or go to the wayside. There's no good solution. So I'd have to look more into it before I said I support it or don't support it, because I don't know what that means right now as far as disallowing the permit to be extended. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest, well, first of all, I'm going to ask Peter, of the remaining questions, is there any that is hugely critical? Jason, I already said thank you for your attendance. I see you waving goodbye. Once again, thank you.
Here's one question that is critical, and it may be that you want to ask Jason if he wants to answer it, if he can stay around for just another minute.
No, he's gone. He's gone.
Okay. Here's the question. Usually when one runs for select board, they have something specific they want to change or implement. Did you have any such thoughts? If not, how can we make an informed decision on who to support?
Okay. Now that we're down to two, I think it would be less than fair to give an opportunity for a response. But I will look at Melissa Murphy and Clifford Williams if for their consent for us to finish this.
I would actually prefer not to. I don't think it's equitable to have us answer a question that one of the candidates isn't here to answer. I think if he has to leave, we should end this session.
Thank you. I agree. And to those who ask questions, Peter and I are learning to adapt. We appreciate the questions that came. Some of them came in not late, but while people were speaking. And so we were forced to look at the questions and the speakers. And we didn't do, or I didn't do as good a job as I would have liked to. But so far, this has been a very, very valuable portion of our forum. So with consent, we will move to the next part, which is a presentation by Judith Wagner on her candidacy for planning board. Judith?
Thank you, everybody, to the Civic League and to colleagues on the panel and to those listening. When I was first asked to join in this forum, I had an opponent who has since withdrawn. So This approach that we're going to use is a little bit different than has been true in the past. I wanted to start with explaining a little bit about what the planning board does, because that's something not everybody fully understands necessarily. This is my second run for planning board. I was elected in 2018 for a partial term, and now I'm running for a full 5-year term. I'm currently chair of the planning board. Planning board has several functions. One is to be the applier of regulations. So we typically meet at least once a month, reviewing requests for permits as appropriate or other kinds of standards that are either in the bylaws or state statutes. In addition, we give advice on things. For example, we review citizen articles related to zoning coming up for town meeting. And planning board members are also members of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. That's a state-created entity, a regional planning entity that has a lot to do with overseeing transportation funding and other issues. I think, as several of you have commented, particularly Jason, I'm hopeful that that group will be more active in talking about economic development going forward. We also work with a variety of other entities that have some role with planning, and this may not always be clear from some citizen inquiries we get. There's a separate historic district commission that reviews compliance with historic regulations. There's the Zoning Board of Appeals that reviews 40Bs and variances. There's the Conservation Commission that has to do with regulatory issues related to environment and water. So just for those who may not be familiar with the full range of duties, that's really what the charge to the planning board is. For my background, why I'm running and what issues matter to me, I grew up in Windsor, Connecticut. The reason I was able to come to Nantucket is my great aunt Helen Kirk lived here beginning in the late 30s, early 40s until her death in 1983, and she left me her cottage. I was a longtime law professor and dean at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and my husband and I retired here in 2017. My fields of expertise for teaching were property, land use, and state and local government law, and I'd served on the equivalent of the Select Board and the County Planning Commission when I lived in North Carolina, as well as on various legislative committees. So I really felt, because I love the island very much and felt I had some expertise that might be useful, that I should try to make that available, and happily people elected me in 2018. The reasons I ran at that point are really similar to the reasons I'm seeking to run again. I've been concerned, first of all, with good government. That's really kind of in my genes. That's what I've spent my whole life working on, teaching students and contributing. So trying to have fair, transparent, informed decision-making, I think, is really significant. And we've made some strides on that, I believe. The planning board, I think, is working very effectively, reflecting a lot of different viewpoints from different life experiences. We've worked on things related to environmental protection and resiliency. We need to keep doing more of that. I was lucky as a member of the NPEDC to be able to sit for a year on the Affordable Housing Task Trust Fund Board as they were going through strategic planning. So that was a matter of great concern to me. And I was glad that I was able to work in that setting and that continue to try to see in my planning board capacity ways to contribute there. I also believe we need to be thoughtful about how we manage growth here because we have only this wonderful space, and if we let it be overrun more than is reasonable to keep the natural balance, we'll really all regret it, and the next generation won't have the joy of the setting in which we now live. So what I hope to do if I'm elected again, and now I'm unopposed, so I'm particularly hopeful that I will be elected again, is to keep working on those issues. One of the major matters of concern for the planning board in the next several years is reviewing and reshaping the master plan for the island. That will need to be in close coordination with the select board and its strategic plan, as well as the views of the many town commissions working on matters of note. I particularly want to thank the Civic League because we've already started to reach out to the Civic League to have them help us make contact with residential associations around the island to get their input. So I think that's probably all the time I've been given here, but my website is wegner4ack.net. That's WEGNERFORACK.net for anybody who'd like to see more about my background or my positions. Thank you again.
Judith, thank you. As I understand our schedule, Peter, this brings us to a close.
Yes.
Cool.
I want to.
Well, I was just going to reminisce. When I was a teenager, it was appropriate to say cool. And so I adopted it. And just a few years ago, I looked at my grandchildren and said, hey, if I say cool, will that make me an old dude? Oh, no, they said cool's a good word. So this has been a very cool experience. And thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Clifford.
And if I could just, in closing, I'd like to kind of call attention to the fact that we've seen how technology can really transform the way in which we get to know our candidates and their views on things. And I would invite viewers to share with us their reactions, positive or negative, by emailing us and just letting us know at the Civic League, what you thought and what your suggestions are for the future. You can send your email to petermorrison@me.com. Please don't expect a response, but I will pass it on to our executive board, and I think we've discovered a new way to do business. Thanks to all for viewing, and pass the word around.
Peter?
Yeah.
In the way of TV advertisement, if you repeat 3 times, then people remember. It's Peter Morrison, no caps, no punctuation, at ME, which you pronounced as me.com.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And don't forget to pass word around that this can be viewed on demand probably within a few days. It will be up and running. Just go to NCTV 18 and try to find your way to YouTube for the Civic League, and you can tell your friends to watch this so that we can get the word out and propagate this wonderful way of getting acquainted with our candidates for office. And we thank them again for all the time they've put in.
Okay. 2 final thanks. For those who logged in as attendees, we greatly appreciate your attendance. And for those who will be watching later, as Peter says, we appreciate that too. And to Denise Cronow and Josh Bowling, our interrogators, we greatly appreciate your time as well. So there's a little red button on the right-hand, lower right-hand side of my screen. It says leave. And I'm going to start exiting. If I can get my cursor to follow down, thank you all.
Files